welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I'm Philip because Spook was traded out.
Well, what do we get for him?
Fuck all.
We spoke prior to the trade period.
Did we?
And
we did. That'd be about 6 months ago.
Yeah, and we said we'd talk to our listeners after the trade period. When you threw to our listeners like that, did you actually think that the trade period was going to be the clusterfuck that we've witnessed?
No. Would anyone except the Brains Trust? And I use that term loosely.
I don't think you can use either of those words. I don't think you can use brains or trust here.
They're mutually exclusive.
So let's go into the trades. And just before we do, let's preface that we don't care who you fucking trade. Trade who you like, but, get something for them.
Yep.
Instead of some shiny beads. And I don't want to keep saying that because the thing that shits me about this whole affair is people just keep going back to, you don't like that we trade players. I don't care who the fuck you trade, but that you're trading and getting nothing back or very little back, that's totally objectionable. So it starts with...
I do have one care about one trade, but we'll get to that.
We're going to go for them in order. We'll talk about that later. It starts with Adam Treloar. His wife signs a contract with Queensland Firebirds. Collingwood, being the socially conscious club that we are, suddenly decide we're very concerned about Treloar's ability to play to an elite level next year while his wife is interstate. So we decide...
Is that factual or is that just a cover story?
Don't know, but, it's in the media. Ned Guy and that are quoted saying, that's
I can't believe I can't believe any of these people.
Well, this is what they apparently say. This is what started our thinking. And then they wanted to convince Treloar to go to Queensland, to the Gold Coast Suns for pick 5. And Collingwood to get pick 5. Gold Coast would get Treloar. That didn't work out. Treloar didn't want to go. And
well, why not? That sounded like a fair deal.
And actually, let me throw back to something, because you go to free agency and people condemn free agents going to good clubs rather than going to shit clubs. And I don't know, I look at them and think, well, if they're at a shit club or they're at a shit club and they've got an offer by a good club, why would you go to another shit club? Surely you've done your time at a shit club.
You're talking about Collingwood, right?
No, I'm talking, you look at someone like Tom Lynch. He had 7 years of suffering at Gold Coast. Why would he go to another shit club? Why wouldn't he go to a club that could, win him a flag? And I'm saying this with Treloar. He was there with GWS as they were coming up and getting smashed. He gets to Collingwood. They struggle for a couple of years while he's there, and then they make this rise to a grand final. Why would he want to go to a club where his entire career is probably going to be played out in the bottom 4 to 6 teams? So if I was Treloar, I would have said, no, I'm not going to Gold Coast. Trade me to Brisbane. I'll go there if you can get that done. But he doesn't want to go, and Collingwood damaged their relationship with him to the extent that we then start dealing with the Bulldogs. As far as it looks like the Bulldogs, we were banking on Bulldogs getting pick 8 from Essendon for Josh Dunkley, and we would get that for Treloar. That didn't happen, so we got pick 14 for Treloar, although we had to swap some second rounders for that.
We had to. Yeah,
well, I mean, you look at the trades and just of the picks, you would have thought that would have been adequate compensation, but you're giving Treloar up and we're paying $300,000 of his contract every year for the next 5 years.
Oh, we got off light then. What a bargain.
What do you think of this trade?
Look, I'll be upfront and say, look, I don't mind the fact that they intended to trade to Treloar and did. Again, this gets back to what you were saying at the start. The value was poor. The intent was obviously to clear him off the cap. And I think that they went in with some deluded belief that they were going to get a very early pick for it, which I think was more the motivation than looking after his mental state. And when that backfired, it became a garage sale. And the garage sale was $4.59 on a Saturday afternoon. A minute before it was about to close, that sale was made. In the end, I think it's deplorable. I think the way it was handled, I think we talked about this was deplorable.
Well, as you said, when we spoke previously, Collingwood's concerned about his mental health. We're worried he won't be able to cope with his wife in Queensland next year. Here, Bulldogs, this is your problem now.
Yeah, well, that sort of doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? Yeah, it really. But again, it's not like we haven't seen 48 examples of lying coming out of the club recently, so you can read that for what it is.
Now, of the 3 players we lost, I actually think Treloar was the most expendable. I don't think he's being used well at Collingwood. I actually think he'll play really well.
Yep,
I think they'll actually all do really well under more structured systems. But if I was the list manager and Collingwood said, well, who are we getting rid of? And I'd be going, okay, well, big salary. And I don't know what the other players' salaries are because there's a few others I'd actually look at, but we don't know what they're getting paid. But I'd say, yeah, okay, let's clear Treloar out. But again, you're getting pick 14 and what we swapped. We actually gave them picks also, and then they gave us a future second rounder, which could be, as high as high 30s. This is a horrible return. But the point I made in the previous conversation was you look at when Brisbane were trying to offload Dane Beams.
Yeah, no, that's where I was about to go. Yeah.
They extorted 2 first rounders from us, and good on them because they could do it. How do we have no authority at the trade table to try and get some more? And we'll go to this now. People will say, well, our hands were tied behind their back because of the salary cap and all those sort of issues. Well, how did that get like that? How did it get so messy that in the space of however long trade period goes, you had to clear out 3 players and, I don't know, $2 million from the cap? How did it come to this point that this needed to be done immediately? And I know Buckley said, we decided, we had to take all the pain now. So we tore off the Band-Aid now and went for it and all that sort of shit. But it's like, why would you let it get to this point?
Yeah, I mean,
I don't understand that.
It's like none of this could have possibly come as a surprise. And on top of that, and they've been talking about, well, the media and everything's been talking about this cap pressure for years, and obviously it's been proven to be true. And how could you get to that point and know that you were this close or you're in danger of, and yet still offer these players years and years of contract and keep back ending? Just out of what? What was the end game meant to be? That just suddenly one day that Excel had come up with a magical formula that says, oh, now we're in the red. It doesn't.
It seriously plays out like they were using Excel and they were just going, yeah, do. This is all good, and then someone, I don't know, let's call him that guy, looked at Excel and saw the scroll bar actually had a little bit more to show and then just moved it and was like, oh, fuck, I didn't say that. Got to get rid of 10 players.
What's a decimal point?
And, why? I know Grundy's contract, his 7-year contract doesn't start until next year. But that is an exemplar to me of this is the way these clubs dealing. Hey, let's give out a 7-year contract that's $17 million and all that sort of stuff. What are other players getting? They were speculating that Tom Phillips. So let's look at Tom Phillips. Got traded for pick 65, which I think is also pretty cheap. But they were saying he was on 500, 600,000. How does that happen?
It's the same as Steph. But isn't this all to do with the... obviously, again, going back to the whole way that we structured these contracts and what all the triggers were. Now, I think the irony amongst all this is that there are sides that win flags, and it's obviously we're not talking about us, who keep their lists together. They all agree to take haircuts or whatever the term is. They somehow keep it all in check. We've busted a cap on the back of losing a grand final. Has there been any other side that's ever done that?
I can't. So if you look at it, Richmond has shed players over their little premiership run, but it has been those James Age, Tom Phillips types. Yeah. They haven't lost, any key players, which I'd argue have lost at least 2 key players here. Essendon had a fire sale about 20 or 18 years ago after their dominant 2000 season, and they played in the grand final in 2001, and then they shed about 3 players. And again, it was more sort of peripheral players. They were good players, but they weren't what you'd consider their key playmakers. Mm-hmm. We, under Buckley, he inherited the Malthouse squad, and then he started trading players out. So he was trading those players out like Daisy and Heater and all that a lot of money would have went with him. And then we've seen guys like Didak and Cloak and all that retire. Then you've had 4 years of bottom 6, 7 finishes. You haven't made the finals. You finally make the finals in 2018. You make a grand final and you make the finals twice more. And your seams are fucking bursting. How is that possible based on the history of what the club has achieved in the last 10 years? Geelong's been making prelims for the last 45 years, and they're not only keeping the list together, they're bringing in Jeremy Camerons and guys like that.
I know.
Richmond brought in fucking Tom Lynch after winning a flag. How, off the very limited success that we've experienced, has Collingwood struggled to keep this salary cap under control? Are they still fucking paying Gordon Coventry? Do we still have his contract in the cap there? We're still looking back at Des Fothergill.
No,
I don't understand.
Apparently, we're paying part of Cameron's contract as well. That's how well we're travelling.
So you look at Tom Phillips. How do you feel about losing him?
Oh, look, I don't think that's a loss at any great stretch. I think, to be fair to him, he was played out of position. But look, yeah, that one I can handle. Again, the value could have been something. The dollar figure is obviously good to get back. There's also, and this is one of the things we talked about the other night, we all know that we're paying $300K for Treloar to play for another club. Now, it seems that we're also paying Phillips to play for another club, and we're paying Stevenson to play for another club.
Well, I was going to say, so source close to us has told us that.
Yeah, it's rumour. We don't know. It's not confirmed. It'd be nice if the club come out and confirm that, so the whole place can be nuked from orbit. They're obviously going to play that card close to their chest, because if that does become public, what's become a shit show will become an epic shit show.
If you're paying Treloar, so that's one player we're paying to play against us, and if if you're paying Stevenson and Phillips, that's 2 other players you're paying to play against us.
Look, and it's not an uncommon thing for clubs to foot some of the other players, Bill. I'm not particularly whinging about that, but if you've managed to do it times, if you've done it times 3.
But you don't have that times 3. You've got to add Beams in there, so they're paying him for the next 2 years to not play.
Beams he's on long service leave still, isn't he?
We don't know about Langdon's actually still got a year on his contract, so he could just sit.
I remember him. He played for us once, didn't he?
Yeah, he could occupy a spot on the list and just get paid because apparently that's the thing at Collingwood. And I was just going to go back to Treloar. 300,000 isn't a small amount. That's effectively a player, that's going to be sitting in our salary cap in terms of a wage, but not on our list. So how long does this go on? Buckley said they've got to tear off the bandage and get all the hurting out of the way. Well, the hurting's not done until you're not obligated to anyone anymore. And we're obligated to Treloar for at least 5 years. We don't know what's happening with Stevenson and Phillips. And looks like we're obligated to Beams for 2 more years. So the pain's not done.
No, you're going to be wearing it for a while. And that's essentially, if you add it all together too, what's that equate to? Is it like maybe say 600,000 or 700,000? Surely that's an exceptionally good marquee player that you could pull in with that.
All I'm just going to say, but I mean, Mark Anderson talked about landing a free agent. Well, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 that we could be offering to a free agent is actually just sitting in our cap, paying players to play against us. It's just absurd. Let's go to the third trade, Stevenson. He got swapped for him, and Atu got swapped for pick 26, which is the biggest appreciation I've ever seen since Jack Watts has traded from Melbourne to Port for like about pick 30. This is a kid who won the Norwich Rising Star just 2 years ago. Last year, there's been some amazing revisionism going on about he's been struggling since winning that Norwich Rising Star. If you look at his statistical returns, they're better in 2019 than they were in 2018. So don't give me this shit that he was struggling last year. He was actually playing pretty well when he was returned forward after Buckley had been playing him at halfback for about the first month. And then he had the betting suspension. This year he was terrible, but what do we judge players on? A single season in a vastly compromised year where there's all these mitigating factors like hubs and, all this sort of shit going on.
And that's right. And look, and quite simply under the criteria when she was judged this year, I don't understand why we haven't traded Grundy.
Oh, that's right. Or DeGoey. DeGoey's been spasmodic too. So let's get rid of him.
Yep.
Maybe we can get a pick in the 40s for both.
Maybe it's just too hard to deal with them.
Well, okay, so there's rumours about Stevenson's behaviour in the hubs. None of it's substantiated. Scuttlebutt is he was difficult to manage. Jeff Walsh said in his interview the morning after the trades that coaches and players did go to him and tell him what he needed to do to get back to the form they wanted him to play, and he wasn't very responsive. If he was a problem child, do you think that we don't know the extent of that might have been going on, but do you think that justifies trading him out?
No, look, and this is the one that really shits me. This is a potential gun in the making. Now, look, he may fall over and never live up to his potential, but fuck, and after 3 years, you don't put a line, and especially this year, surely nobody deserves to be judged particularly harshly under the conditions in which they were meant to live and perform. It's just not patently fair to do so, but yet it suits the narrative in this particular thing to bag him out for this. But this is the one where he's got so much potential and upside. You manage these issues. You just don't fucking amputate the leg to treat an ingrown toenail. It's just smacks of wrong. And look, to be honest with him, I fucking hope, not with him, but I hope he becomes an absolute dead set gun at North and we eat shit for the rest of his career over this, because this one really, really burns me.
Oh, look, it burns me also, and I'm exactly the same. I'm of the mind he's shown enough in 2 of the 3 years he's been at the club that he's an exciting, prodigious talent.
Yep.
And he's the sort of player which you should just be going, you know what, we're going to fucking see this one out. If he becomes a gun, awesome. If he bombs out, well, bad luck, but he was worth taking the risk over. This is not a pick 50, who's going to play 4 years in the reserves and you're speculating, he might still come good or he might not, or whatever the case is, that Paul Seedsman type. This is a guy who's shown his wares. And as you said, this year it was such a compromising season with COVID, the hubs, the congested season. He's coming off glandular. So much shit is going on. And even if it was just that he was behaving like a twat in the hubs, and again, we don't know, but even if he was behaving like a twat in the hubs, you think, okay, this is a 21-year-old kid who is now being forced to live in isolation and just eat and breathe footy with the same people over and over. Who knows if he wouldn't go stir crazy. I mean, look at the way Grundy responded in terms of, his returns. He really struggled. I'm not criticizing Grundy. I'm just saying, you've totally changed the circumstances of what all these people understand in terms of preparation for football. Why is it a surprise that some of them aren't coping or didn't cope well? I mean, we lived through the lockdown in Victoria for 6 months. I mean, how many people did I speak to who said they were going crazy just being in the same house with the same people day in, day out, and having very restricted avenues to go out and have a hit of tennis or something like that? I'm really, really curious what Collingwood's rationale is here, because they've effectively just chopped him. For that draft pick, they've just chopped him. And that draft pick was given back for Treloar. So he's almost been given out for free. And as you said, there's rumours that we're paying North also for this. I honestly don't get it. And of the forwards that we've cut, including our two, this is the one, as you said, that really, really hurts.
Yep. No, it's... it's left me feeling borderline shattered for what we've done here.
I'm not even borderline. I am shattered. It's just, and if you look at the stats this season, he had a shit year, and he still kicked more goals than Will Hoskin-Elliott and Josh Thomas.
Oh, let's not.
No, and this is the thing. It's like, we lost, and this is what frustrates me. It's like and I'll go back to Paul Seedsman, with no disrespect to Paul Seedsman. It's like, okay, we lost this running half back. We actually probably could have used it at the time, but we lost this running half back. You look and go, well, he's a good runner, really nice kick, but there's probably other players we can go to for that option, and finding another guy like that might be as hard. Stevenson, he's shown his talent. He's got speed.
Oh.
These are not things in abundance at Collingwood, particularly in our forward line. So why have you decided, well, this guy's expendable, but we'll keep Josh Thomas on the list and, we'll play Will Hoskin-Elliott, who had an appalling season, and people criticise Stevenson for his lack of physical commitment, but, Hoskin-Elliott's also got that same question mark over him too.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just beggars belief. I think the creed at Collingwood is there's no point shooting yourself in the foot with a gun when there's a bazooka there. Don't do these fuck ups by halves.
Well, yeah. And again, it goes back to returns. I mean, you sort of put a bit of a qualifier on Stevenson, but like if we were going to unload Stevenson and North said, yeah, here's pick 2, but, throw in your second round pick here and maybe throw in that too, I would have said, yeah, okay, well, that's a decent return. Well, that's a good return. I mean, I'm not saying North would have done that. I'm just saying hypothetically, if that were to happen, or if another club was to say, here's pick 5 or here's pick 6, I would have understood, okay, well, that's a good return. Pick 26 is a fucking joke. It's absolutely a slap in the face. And I'm actually curious how bad the salary cap is that Collingwood couldn't just turn around and do what Bulldogs did with Dunkley and just said, no, we'll keep him then.
No, and their intent obviously was never to do that. Because when were all these deals finalised at $7.29?
Yep.
I mean, they're clearly, and everyone knew that they were up against the wall and they were just going to get reamed. Like everybody reams us in these deals, it's just easy to reverse it around. Did I say that right? No, everyone takes advantage of us and we're there to be taken advantage of.
And then you get, I didn't watch it, but after the trade period, Ned Guy apparently was pretty uninspiring when he went and fronted the media. And
uninspired performance at Collingwood. That's almost impossible to believe.
He must have thought it was a grand final. But he's come out and they've asked him the trade strategy, because at this point everyone's going, what the fuck's going on? And he's going, well, we want to replenish the list and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, how are you trying to sell that logic when all you've gotten is the pick 14 for 2 players?
No, hang on. No, they traded 2 picks in the first round, didn't they?
I got no idea. First round?
Pick 16.
Pick 16.
Yeah,
I think we might have started with that one.
Did we?
Yeah.
The talk sounded like we got that as well.
Yeah, they kept talking that sign up. And in terms of first rounders, we talked about this the other night, but effectively second rounders, these picks, 14 and 16, are not great picks. I understand players have been found in the teams. I think Matt Fyfe was picked 17 and all that. But we're also going on a year with this very little exposed form for the next generation because of COVID shut down all those competitions.
Nobody played. It's a lottery about who you're going to draft this year, surely. I mean, you had a number of, we talked about it early, a couple of months ago, that, there was talk about there's potential to be about 5 or 6 really good key forwards in this draft. But, obviously no one's got to see them play or do anything for pretty much any part of this year, apart from probably drone film them kicking at a park or something. But it must feel like you're up against about what you're picking, because there's no indicative form that's anything other than 12 months old. I mean, they must have a reasonable handle, you'd think, most recruiters, except the ones that work for us. But yeah, it's got to be a bit of a mixed bag. But
I mean, it can obviously work for you because somebody who's a gem might slip through. But I mean, the other problem is at this age,
that happens to us all the time.
Well, at this age too, with these sort of players, they're still growing. So, the guy that they saw last year in 2019, who was 5'7" and had a bit of pace, might have just sprouted out to be a 5'11" gangly key forward who no longer has the agility to play the way he was playing previously, or whatever the case might be. So, at that age, players are changing into physically and all that. So that can actually affect whatever the evaluation is when it's gauged from 2 years ago. COVID?
No, I just said bullshit.
Yep.
No, I'm just joking.
So what's his name? Ned Guy sold it as, and Ned Guy was adamant, the salary cap's a beat up. It's a fucking beat up, Spook.
I love this club. I love what comes next. And who else said it was a bit of a beat up?
And then Jeff Walsh the following morning said, it's a beat up.
Oh, well, that's two people. That's two people backing each other to the hill. That's good to see at Collingwood. I like the fact that we've come out and the story's unified and we've all knuckling down to steer that ship on the right course. So that's the last you got to say on this?
No, I'm going to go on a little bit.
Oh, okay.
And we're told we wanted to, go back to the draft with this extra pick and rejuvenate the list. So I don't know. I think we're going to... We're probably looking for like conjoined twins or something. Is there like a player who's like a conjoined twin in the league in the lower competition, and we can just separate him and have two players for the price of one? I don't know. But Jeff Walsh also told us Collingwood was never interested in Tom Lynch.
But hang on a second. Wasn't there some footage of them going to his parents' place?
Yeah, there could have been, and
maybe they just wanted to borrow some sugar.
Well, Eddie McGuire correctly said we did talk to him, but we were never interested in pursuing him.
Oh, that's different then. Yeah, because when you say you never spoke to him, that must imply that you never spoke to him about being interested. So you just rang him up and said, "We're not interested." Right. Just rang up, mate. We're not interested.
How you doing at the Suns?
I know you're excited about coming to play with us, coming to a successful club with a lot of promise. But we're just ringing to let you know. Actually, no, we won't ring you. We'll turn up to your parents' house to let you know in person we're not interested.
No.
Yep. Okay, I'm with this. What else we got to talk about? So we've covered the fact that our stories are straight. So Walsh and Ned Guy have convinced me that they've done this for all the right intentions. Now you haven't got anything. You haven't got any other rumours that might contradict these statements, do you?
No. Oh, hang on. And then Nathan Buckley
I want to see some physical evidence of this.
And Nathan Buckley came out and spoke to Jared Watley on SEN, and Buckley sounded pretty exhausted, but he acknowledged that it was a salary dump, that things were really tight, and they thought they should get all the pain out of the way in one season.
Oh, I can't accept this. Surely Ned Guy and Walsh must have told Buckley that wasn't true.
Actually, sorry, let me backstep because I forgot.
I would have thought you'd missed somebody there. Yep.
Yeah,
a certain email.
Yeah, so I saw an email from Mark Anderson saying,
"You're as bad as Collingwood, you know that."
Yeah, you just edit that out and go back. Mark Anderson sent out a very conciliatory email talking about how the salary cap was tight, and this is a result of being a contender, and there were free agents who said, "Can we come to Collingwood?" But we couldn't fit them in because the salary cap was so tight, and even though we cleared $2 million.
I'd say that these players, the ones that wanted to come, are they the ones that we went to their houses and spoke to them?
I don't think I spoke to. I can name the players who came to Collingwood and said they wanted to play for Collingwood. I have the exclusive on this.
Yeah. All right, give it to us.
Adam Treloar and Jaden Stevenson. They came to the club and said, "I would like to be at Collingwood in 2021."
And the club responded in kind by giving them long contracts.
Yes. And saying, "We are going to pay you to play for North Melbourne and for Bulldogs, respectively."
You don't think our list management's based on the Snakes and Ladders board game, do you?
So anyway, Mark Anderson said all this sort of stuff, and he was a lot more thoughtful and diplomatic response. Then we had Buckley on SEN just admitting, outright saying, yes, it was a salary cap dump. Just things were so tight.
That's 2 versus 2. I mean, surely it's not that difficult when you all work under the same roof, although technically you don't at the moment, to get your story straight. You don't think they would have spoken about this? They do media training, don't they? That prepare the players for not going out and saying hopefully the wrong thing. You don't think these people that are on a lot of money would understand the concept of communication and getting a story straight, do you? Or am I being unreasonable?
Look, I think you've been unreasonable because no one who's spoken at this stage is a key figure at the club, are they? No one holds a position of any authority at the club who's doing the talking. No,
they're all the lesser lights, to be fair, aren't they?
Yeah,
I can see how you can make the mistakes though. If you just like flunkies and you're in, it'd be a couple of interns, wouldn't they? Be a couple of interns. Anderson, he'd be an intern, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
fair enough.
Well, and you're seeing the tone shift. So it went from Ned Guy and Jeff Walsh just stonewalling everyone because someone must have said this is the best way to deal with it. Just pretend it doesn't happen. Then you had this massive uproar. So Mark Anderson wrote that beautiful email and was very diplomatic and conciliatory. And that didn't seem to work. So they sent Bucks out to be slaughtered. And he was just very heartfelt and just said, well, this is what's happened. And, I'd love to have kept all the players. But getting rid of them won't damage the fabric of our club, apparently. So
that's all right then.
He was very careful in the way he tried to speak. But he still said a few things which, like he said, getting rid of them, they were basically the expendables. We could do without them.
They were easily. Did he say it? But the one of the comments was that they were easily replaced.
I don't think he said it straight up, but he alluded to that. So
because when you look back over our draft history, it is littered with success stories.
Yep.
Over the last 10 years. So I can understand how they'd feel confident about nailing. Look, my baseline expectations for Stevenson's replacement are fairly low. I probably don't expect him to win the Norwich Rising Star in his first year. I will accept the second year. And if he's got to be probably good for 40 goals in his first year, that'd be a plus. But I'll take 39. I'm not greedy. It'd be easily. Surely how many of those are just drifting around the picks 14 and 16? There'd be what 12, 15 of them. So it's a.
Who the fuck knows? Because there's no junior competition. Who knows? Who fucking knows?
Maybe we can toss a coin. Coin tosses are good, aren't they? Just maybe eeny, meeny, miny, mo could be a good way of picking them.
Yeah, but hang on, this continues. So.
Oh, sorry, I thought we'd finished.
No, Eddie Maguire then comes out full of bluster.
No,
the media's come after Collingwood. Why would the media come after Collingwood? You just got rid of four players for very little. We know you're paying the Bulldogs for Treloar. As we've said, we've got from a good source that you're paying Hawthorn for Phillips. We don't know about Stevenson. As Driver, formerly from Buckley Service, pointed out, with all this salary cap rejigging going on, who knows if we haven't breached something, because apparently counting's not a big thing at Collingwood. But Eddie comes out full of criticism for people who are criticising Collingwood. And now I do have a quote. He says, if there's a criticism, it's that Collingwood have looked after players too good as far as the salary cap is concerned.
And certainly, it's certainly by overpaying, they've looked after them.
And players have been sensational back-ending their contracts to make it happen because there was a window of opportunity.
Really? When was that?
Look.
So that window of opportunity, are we talking about 18? Do we know that we're going to be that good in the end of 17?
No, the window of opportunity would be 1920.
Okay. So this is all post that great era of success. Fair. All right. Yep.
Yeah. And I might be old-fashioned, but Eddie, don't pay your players too good. Be stingy.
Surely you'd want to maybe win a premiership before you demand all these big salaries. Wouldn't that be part and parcel of measuring success, or have I read this wrong?
I would have thought, yeah. I don't know who.
How many other runners-up have blown their caps recently? Can you think of anyone?
No. I can't even think of premiers who've blown their cap. I mean, Richmond's losing their brand analysis and Reece Conkers and all that. And, to be fair, Hawthorn did lose a big chunk of salary when Buddy Franklin went to Sydney, but then they kept their list together for the next few years until they ditched Mitchell and Hodge, and that wasn't until after their period of success because they were trying to actually rebuild the list.
What sort of madness was all that?
Yeah, they did have those free flags under their belt, and
it tends to take the sting out a bit, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, and I guess Bulldogs are a little bit, might say lucky, but circumstance with Boyd retiring and Stringer getting traded out, that's probably helped them keep it under control so they can pay Treloar half of what we should be paying. But why are we paying? Why are we too good? Why are we paying these players so much? Why are we giving them long-term contracts?
I don't know. It's like
going back to Coventry, I think his contract expires next year too. I think he's been signed for 114 years.
Well, haven't we traded him? He's done nothing for 80 years.
I actually
Is he been like trashing any hotel rooms or throwing his amplifier over? Anything
not
crazy
as far
rock
as I'm
star
aware,
crazy?
but who knows? Who knows? You know, and then to top it all off, after all that bluster, Eddie's now come out and said, look, I'm hurting too. I'm not just an elected official. Can you remind me when he was elected again?
21 fucking years ago.
What was it, 1999?
Yep.
I think Prince wrote a song about it. So he was elected in 1999. So he's not just an elected official. He's one of us. He's one of the supporters. And he's hurting too.
Don't blame me. I'm just as upset as you lot. Please love me again.
Yep. Could this club,
the answer is yes. Whatever it is, the answer is yes. Unequivocally.
Look, I've said this before, how anyone can actually sit there and say, this is good for the club and I trust in what they're doing. There is so much shit that's gone on here, going back to the Dane Beams deal, because back then, this didn't just spring on them. They would have known that the salary cap was pretty full back then. So someone decided to sign Beams for 4 years, and they're paying a lot of money. And then they had to shed Age, so 1 year later. So already they know that things are going on, or things are not working out for them. And then you have all this shit surrounding Treloar, trying to manage him out of the club, I guess, under the pretense of our mental health concerns. And then you trade him the Bulldogs, and then you get lowballed, and you decide to pay salary, and Stevenson, and all this on top of the salary cap mismanagement, on top of the 5 principal figures of the club, all sending out a different message. How anyone can sit there and say, "Oh yeah, I believe they have a strategy, and I'm totally confident in where they're going." How the fuck does this work?
I've bought into it. I think it all sounds perfectly reasonable and feasible. It's
seriously ineptitude of the grandest scale over a time frame. It's not just one mistake. This has been mistake after mistake after mistake, snowballing to get to this point. And even if you want to take Buckley at face value, go, I felt we had to tear the bandage off and get it all done. Why have you gotten to that position? I don't know any other club that's gotten to that position. Even if it required, look, let's manage this from whenever this was an issue, going back to 2018. Maybe that's when you should have started looking at, well, we need to start trading some people out to give us a little bit of breathing space so we don't get to a point where we have to have a fire sale and we have no leverage in getting value for players that we are going to trade out. I don't understand how there's people sitting out there just... The optics behind all this is fucking terrifying, and people are sitting out there full of confidence for the club, with the club, and where they're going.
They got a plan. That's all you need to know.
What's the plan?
I can't tell you that.
So, and the excuses they're given about replenishing the list, which is, okay, maybe that was their intent. Maybe they thought they were going to get more for Treloar and Stevenson and all that, but that hasn't panned out. So I'm not actually, I don't, there's too many people, I think, focused on the on-field logistics of this, that, okay, we'll replace Treloar and Stevenson. And I can see with Treloar, there's probably a little bit of feeling there that in 2018, he missed like 9 games, and this year, I think he missed 9, and we functioned okay without him. So they probably looked at him like, we can probably replace him. Given our inability to kick goals this year, and last year when Stevenson wasn't there, I don't see how he's considered so expendable. There's that whole thing about Josh Dacos going past Tom Phillips because apparently there's only one wing on the ground.
Well, generally the way that we play there is.
And, when you play a game of football, the midfielders just stay in position the whole 100% of the game. They never rotate.
And nobody ever gets injured.
No, that Collingwood, no one's ever gotten injured.
No, it's baffling. A lot of the logic is baffling. And the reason why a lot of the logic is baffling, because when you just make shit up on the spot, you get caught out quite easily.
Well, they're talking about Oscar McDonald coming to Collingwood.
Fantastic. Well, that doesn't fix everything. I don't know what will.
And they're looking at, in terms of when they talk about Trelaw and that going out, they're talking about Braden Sire coming up to fill that position, which we hope he can because he's shown he can play, but he's had soft tissue issues and he's,
But even when he was over his injuries, he still didn't get a game.
Yeah, there's queries about his motivation to do what's required.
Well, then isn't he traded out like Stevenson was?
I'm surprised they didn't. I'm surprised there's a few people there that I would have thought would be shopped around a little bit. Like Hoskin Elliott, they said there was a report earlier just before the trade period that he had been told he would be shopped around, but then there was nothing surrounding that. So I don't know if that was just people were not interested or they just did it so quietly and slyly. There's a petition that's been started wanting an extraordinary general meeting. It's got over 1,000 signatures. Admittedly, some of them are probably going to be fake or joke signatures or opposition supporters taking the piss. But I'd say when you got 1,000 signatures, let's just say 50% of them are fake. That's still going to be 500 signatures of people wanting change. I know it's only a small representation of the Collingwood supporter base, but this is a petition that's only been around for a little bit of time. It probably hasn't gotten the exposure that it could have. There's a groundswell demanding change at Collingwood. How do you feel about that?
Fucking well, but me personally, who's been calling for this for about 2 years, I totally and absolutely 1,000% agree that change has to happen. But that's what's comforting is, I think the thing is there's that sort of sense of apathy has been brewing in people for a while, and this last week.
If I can just quickly interject. If you go back to the grand, and you mentioned this with the grand final year sort of being a band-aid over all this and fooling people into thinking everything was okay. You go back to 2017, there was a lot of unrest right then.
Yep.
There was a lot of unrest about how shit this is all turning out. So, as you've said, 2018 grand final, it probably fooled people into thinking, okay, it's finally arrived. I thought that was like, okay, well, maybe we're going to have a little period of contention here, but it seems to have come unraveled very quickly again. So that unrest and frustration that was building in 2017 is now being amplified by the clusterfuck that's been the last 4 weeks. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so that apathy that's been brewing for a while, it's almost like there was the potential there for a bonfire that just needed a catalyst to start it, and this was the perfect storm of cataclysmic behaviour that's really tipped people off the deep end now. And there's a lot of call. You saw the stupidity of the club, and you could say that 1,000 times over the last 4 days, 5 days, whatever we're at now, around the tweet just before, or was it the day of, or the afternoon of the final day of trading, and we'd all heard the potential shitstorm to be was swirling in the rumour mill, and it was obviously gearing towards being quite accurate. Where the club tweeted about how would you like to see the day unfold, and the fucking vitriol in the Twitter feed underneath, and it's amazing to think that people on Twitter get angry at anything, steered at the club was borderline feral. And post that, these fucking posts about wishing players well that you just shit on, it's just some of the most staggeringly insensitive stuff I've ever seen. You've had Trelaw and Stevenson come out pretty much straight away and said, I don't want to fucking go. I wanted to stay.
Well, Trelaw was very open about that, and his is the case that was documented over the entirety of the trade period. I mean, Stevenson went from, his name's being floated to, they're floating his name to put a rocket up him, to shit, this is really happening.
Oh, it was a sickening feeling when I read that he was going. Absolutely sickening. But yeah, I think the way the club handled it at the time, again, the vitriol that came flying back at them, what the fuck did they think was going to happen? Stick side by side up your ass. Fuck me.
And can I just throw something else in? Because I saw this today, and I hate when people use this as defense. Ben Brown went for like a 30-something pick to Melbourne, whatever the case was.
Just Ben Brown, wasn't there about 3 of his teammates that went with him?
I don't know. I didn't really follow it. But people are going, well, look, Ben Brown was traded cheaply, so why are you complaining about Stevenson? And it's like, understand that when trades start happening, they tend to set the curve for what the pricing is going to be around players. But just because North got very little return for Ben Brown doesn't mean it's okay that Collingwood got very little return. It's like, why are you using a trade that was pretty horrible in terms of what North got back as a defense for us being horrible? It's just stupid. It's just like, we should fucking be better than that.
Yep.
Let me ask you this. All right, so there's all that shit surrounding, both Stevenson and Treloar came out. Treloar said, Buckley told me the leadership group said they want me to go. They don't want me around anymore. And Buckley's denied that was said. And Treloar's going, no, that's exactly what was said. And then Buckley's come out in his interview with Watley going, oh, well, I said a few things and I can see how Adam might have taken it that way. Do you think this makes
more lies?
Well, we don't know where the truth is, and Stevenson
let's assume on everything we've heard that they're lies.
Well, Stevenson's also complained about his communication with Buckley, and as someone else pointed out, who's the common denominator here? It's not Stevenson or Treloar. Do you feel, and this is point of view of mate, do you feel Buckley's position should be untenable?
Oh, it's borderline is. I mean, there's one other thing around this too, and I heard in the SEN interview with him where he sort of more or less implied that his job to communicate with them is to sit there and tell them all the wonderful things that happens, because when it came to the fact that it was time to tell these players that they're no longer required, somebody, and he didn't say who, all decided that it shouldn't be him, and that sort of communication was cut short there, and that was their out argument. Part of being a leader is it's about having to deal with adversity as well. And for Buckley to come out and tweet, this was the hardest day of his life or whatever, and then to say afterwards, well, actually, no, I didn't really speak to them, so I'm just really struggling with what the hard bit was. Did he just hide in a room and cry about what he couldn't say to him on the way out? Because it sounds like very little. If you've got, well, obviously, there's issues there around maybe the management of some of these players should have been fucking better than it was. And that your job is to encourage, lead, and develop growth and address issues with that, because you are essentially the father figure, the figurehead of that club, and then just to fucking disappear and hide is pretty fucking weak, I think. And I think a lot of the angst that sort of come out from Treloar and Stevenson surely has to be around that. He mentioned in that interview that he reached out to Phillips, and Phillips hadn't got back to him. And obviously he's pissed off as well too, because they must all feel betrayed. And I think out of everyone at the club that you would feel the most betrayed by would be your coach. And if he's fucking not made the effort to talk to you or explain it or give you anything other than a suggestion that you should be seeking a trade, I think that's pretty poor. Now, if that's the case next year and you're playing under Buckley, how much trust do you think you have in that gentleman as a player?
Look, if I was a player, I'll look at this two ways. If I was a Collingwood player right now, my faith in him would be very much rocked.
Yep.
And I don't know, we don't know how his relationships with the players and all that. The one issue I have, the big issue I have with Buckley is there seems to be a point where he just turns on players and not turns on them, but they just seem to lose whatever rapport they're meant to have with him. So you look at Stevenson and Treloar, and we don't know how Phillips feels. Phillips has sort of said a few things in terms of like, yeah, okay, I'm moving on and blah, blah. So he hasn't said anything. He hasn't been bitter or anything publicly, but we don't know what he's like privately, how he feels. He might feel like a taco who's just been discarded. We don't know. So, but then you go back to like Paul Seedsman. Seedsman grew up idolising Buckley. He was a Collingwood supporter. He wore Buckley's number, and then he wants to leave the club. You get guys like Heathshaw, Lumumba, they're Daisy. You get guys who have left. Darren Jolly, from memory, left acrimoniously. He, from memory, was told, he wasn't told, he was just like, oh, well, you're out. And that was it. There was no actual real conversation. There seems to be a point with certain players who just, once Buckley's decided their time's up, he doesn't seem to invest energy into them. This is just from the outside looking in. Maybe he has great conversations with these people, but from all the evidence, it seems there's a number of players who have left with some resentment towards the senior coach. And obviously that's going to happen when you're running an organization with, so many individuals, but it seems to be happening a bit more than it should be at Collingwood. So I know there's players that left under Malthouse who are a little bit acrimonious, and I recall the same thing under Lee Matthews. But it seems to be a regular theme that comes back with Collingwood, that there's a personality here. Buckley hasn't connected with him, and he's been turned away. And you look at someone like Treloar, who, if you believe the reports, the reason he chose Collingwood was because of his relationship with Buckley at the sports academy from years and years ago. And it's like, surely you should have time to sit down with him and just go, well, look, this is where we are. Oh, yeah. And the one thing that disappointed me too in all this, and I don't know, maybe they tried it and it just never became public, but given that pretty much everything has become public, that this hasn't become public, which suggests to me it never happened. They renegotiated with Mason Cox to keep him at the club. Was this put out there to Treloar and Stevenson and Phillips? Was it put out there to players? Look, things are tight.
Well, you bear in mind too, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier in the year, that one of the reasons why Cox wasn't being played, because they were trying to avoid the trigger. Now, in the light of everything that's happened since, that was a grain of salt rumor, but it almost really does hold water now, because Coxie's come back and they've flattened his contract. He's agreed to take a haircut, isn't it the term that they use these days? So clearly there's options there to negotiate, unless of course they just want you fucking gone. Now I would imagine though, certainly in Treloar's case, if they wanted him fucking gone, this is a last minute sort of decision. And I reckon this is all predicated on the sniff that once his wife got the job in Brisbane, they saw a pick there to be taken.
Well, that's public. There's Ned Guy and the others have said it. It was that started us thinking down this path. So I would have thought that that whole conversation would have went, hey, Adam, your partner's going to Queensland. Do you want us to trade you up there? And if you said no, it would have been okay. Well, do you feel you're going to cope? Yes. Well, we're a bit concerned. So how do we deal with this? And, to be fair, I mean, Treloar's spoken about mental health problems, and we don't know how serious it was for him. Maybe the club is going on evidence that, they felt it was going to be totally unmanageable. That doesn't give them the right to do what they did, but I'm just sort of playing the devil's advocate there. But still, you never actually heard any of that. You never heard any of that. We're going to sit down and work out how to make this work. And then when you go towards the end of the trade period, it really seems like, hey, they really need to clear money. Buckley said it. Buckley has said it. Yep. So there was players going to go, but it just seemed that Treloar was the first one to present that opportunity, and it just steamrolled from there, or snowballed from there. Mm-hmm. So I look at that club, and I think Buckley's position, I've supported him and defended him a lot, but I think it's not just him, Ned Guy, whoever's in charge of the finances in terms of accounting, their positions are untenable, and they should be replaced, because this club has a stench of stagnancy and deterioration, and the amount of shit surrounding this trade period, it's not negligible. Like I said, I can't believe anyone can just sit there and go, yeah, okay, well, that happened. There was so much wrong with what went on over the last 2 to 4 weeks. You can't just dismiss it. And it speaks of greater issues.
No. And I think, there's quite a few people we know that have canned their memberships over this, that offended. there's an element of my membership that I gave money to Collingwood to that I consider to be a donation that I've been doing for 22 years, which I've pulled the plug on because I've never felt more disconnected from my club since dot, and that's including all the fucking wonderful grand final losses that I eventually bounced back from. But I feel incredibly disenfranchised with this period. The interesting thing was, out of all this, clearly I'm not alone, and there's quite a lot of people that are voting with their feet. They shut down the membership phone number on the Friday because of the demand. I did notice when I tried to opt out using the methods instructed on the literature for my renewal that was sent out a week or two ago, that all those hyper URLs were down. None of those outs were available. I went into the Ticketmaster website and there was nothing there to remove or change or anything. It's like it was damage control plus 10. Taking down the calls. It really sort of screams that there's a lot of people really pissed off at the moment. And then the fact that we all got our confirmation of the opt-out email at 4:49 on Sunday afternoon was incredible. All with the same writing as well. Beautiful. Well done. There's nothing like
form. There's a form response.
Yep,
and this goes to just another aspect of the club. There's been a number of horror membership stories about dealing with the club, trying to get responses from them. They never respond, but when they need your money, they're straight on it. And I don't know what aspect of the club seems to be firing well. It's given what we saw this year, our on-field performances weren't great. And that we weren't be able to bring through, more of the draftees and sort of shit like that, to me suggests that whatever those scratch matches were, they were just horrible to bring in, the guys like Bianco and Rant and all that sort of stuff. We lost Gary Hocking as a coach. We got, whereas Geelong and Richmond kept their assistant coaches on. Had the typical fucking injury season that's, it's just synonymous with us now. What the fuck is going right at this club? And you can't tell me if the drafting and the trade's going right, because it's obviously not. So what is going right at this fucking club that we should feel we can trust the people in charge?
No, definitely agree. I don't trust them. I feel very disconnected from Collingwood at the moment, and I don't think I'm alone. And I think in order for me to feel reinvigorated and resume interest, it's part of my issue that I've had for a couple of years, that I think that from the top down, that the broom needs to come out and that place needs to be reevaluated and rebuilt.
The other thing too is, you look at, I've always had this belief, to go from thereabouts to a contender, you need improvement from two unanticipated sources. So Collingwood's talking about, hey, we're going to move to go into the midfield and that's going to help for things. It's like, well, he's been there for a while. I'm expecting this from him. I'm expecting him to be part of the development of this club. If you go back to 2010, when we went from a prelim in 2009 to premiers in 2010, we got Jolly and Ball on board. We didn't know that was going to happen. You go back to 1990, we got Francis and Russell on board. So even if you go back to 2006, when we in 2405 were those horror years, and 26 we started coming up the ladder, and a big influx of that was Dane Swan. I don't think anyone expected he was going to become the midfielder that he did, and that was his first real season of it. And then you had Ben Johnson coming off the half back. Going into next year, I don't know where that improvement's going to come from, because you haven't added anything. Obviously, you're going to still get draftees, but you haven't really added anything.
No.
And you've lost. I still think, Stevenson's an irreplaceable component in that forward line, which was so spluttering this year. I don't know how the club's going to go, oh, well, we'll just have fucking Flynn Appleby take his spot, or whatever the case is going to be. He's a unique talent, and they've dumped him. So what? Josh Thomas will play however many games next year, and
it makes you sick. It's
You know, so,
amazing that that these guys are so easily replaceable. Where three of them were pretty much first pick for the bulk of the year.
oh, look, the Treloar and Stevenson were starting 18, and Phillips only sort of slipped out of the starting 18 as the season went on, but that was largely because he was being played as a high half forward, which he's not meant, he's not. So his form really struggled. I don't, they talk about Sire. Look, Sire had a great 218, but geez, it's been 2 years since then. What's the fuck's he done? Are we going to bank on him? His future's in his own hands, but he's not the sort of guy where you're looking at him going, oh, well, he played 4 games one year, then 8 the next year, then 20 the next year, and now he's become a steady contributor. He's a guy who was in the reserves for about 12 years. Then he came up in 218 and looked really good for half the year. And since then, he just hasn't been able to get a run at it. So, what are we expecting?
He's the solution. That's it. It'll magically come good next year, won't it?
And then I've seen people like, I have to mention him because it's, it's customary now. I've seen people pose like Nathan Murphy, and it's like, well, that's the same thing. He played a few games in 18. He looked good, and that's it. That's pretty much all we've seen of him. And we can't discount how much the lack of system this year is going to affect the development of some of these guys or their continuity. So I don't know where they're expecting any improvement from. They're saying it's going to come from within, but even looking at from within, where's that going to come from? They talk about the Tyler Browns and the Callum Browns and all that sort of stuff. All right, Tyler looks a likely prospect. He's still about 48 kilos, though. Callum's had a really bad year and a half. And then who is it? We expect Josh Dacos to get even better? I don't know. What's the plan?
I've no idea. Except that I've been told that they have a plan, so we just have to trust them. Because they've demonstrated so much capacity to earn that trust over the last couple of weeks. So I'm on board.
Well, it's all going to be good then.
It's easy fix. Easy fix.
What are we complaining about?
I don't know. I think I just blown hot air now. Sorry?
Let's just sing the song. Let's just sing the song. Everything's all right now.
Yeah, that fixes everything, doesn't it? Yeah, look, I think the Boo-Rah bluster and the fact that we're Collingwood and you're not, it just really shows how stale and stagnant that approach is, because it just doesn't apply anymore. There's just too much divulging of information. You get to see enough varying opinions in digital format these days that it does make you question about what you say or what you think. You can be influenced by posters on forums. You can be influenced by people on Twitter or on TV. It does make you approach the game 6 or 7 different times a week. Unless, of course, it's Collingwood, then you're pretty much uniform in your approach. But there's so much around this now that sort of says that it just shows how behind the times they are. Their approach to this was just smacked of arrogance. They just thought that we'd all go, well, okay, you've done the right thing. Let's just boo-rah and sing the song and we'll all move on. I seriously think they thought we wouldn't react the way we did. I think it's massively taken the club by surprise, and they're in a fair bit of damage control now. Now, one of the sad things I see across the supporter base is just how quickly, within a couple of days, people just went from anger to acceptance. I think that's another aspect of following Collingwood that needs to be drummed out of the mindset of that. You shouldn't accept mediocrity and poor decisions. You should be angry about it, and you should be voicing your opinion, and you should be yelling as loud as you possibly can to be heard by that club. They need to understand that they've wronged, and then they need to understand that they need to do things better and improve and fix a lot of stuff.
Oh, I totally agree. And look, the primary issue here isn't so much the trading, it's the salary cap. How did they let that get so out of control that they lost all leverage at the trade table? If we went into the trading this week, then last week, and there was no issue with the salary cap, and we could have just said, well, we're not taking this deal, fuck off. That would have given us leverage. So we've actually lost a lot of power because the salary cap has become bloated, which has meant, as Mark Anderson has said, we can't court players who might want to come to the club. We can't go after the Jeremy Camerons and all that, the guys who would solve key position deficiencies at the club, which is what we desperately need. And come trade period, we have no leverage to take care of ourselves. So we have to give up players for a fraction of their worth. So who was in charge of this that let it get to this state? Whose idea was it to continually back end contracts? I mean, is this why they were keeping the likes of Ben Reed and so forth on when it was apparent that they were at the very least 2 years past their use by date, where we're still paying them some contract,
And
but we're
just on Ben
continually
Reed,
rolling it?
I read somewhere the other day that his back-ended contract came to fruition this year, and he was exceptionally well paid in his final year, which is just absolutely bizarre if true. So how
That's
many
insane
games
if
did he?
true, because
Like if he's back-ended and he's pulling in 600,000 to 800,000, let's be conservative. I have no idea, to be honest. How many games did he play this year, or even last year? You could count them on
this year.
Yeah, so you can count it on one hand. That was money well spent.
All right, so this is Ben Reed's form line. So he played 2 this year, and obviously one of those who got injured. So, and I'm not saying that to be a prick. It's just he's obviously got an injured. So he played 2 this year. He played 8 last year. He played 6 in 2018, 15 in 2017, 17 in 2016, and 5 in 2015, and 4 in 2014. And then you go to the sort of years he was playing consistently. So his his durability in the last 3 years has been terrible.
So why would you reward that?
I don't know.
And I'm not saying like you're rewarding it because you back-ended it because you thought it was going to happen. But surely that's the sort of player where the writing was on the wall a number of years ago that his body's going to let him down.
In the last 7 years he's played, in only 2 of those years has he played double digits in games. The other 5 years he's played single digits in games. So he's played 4, 5, 6, 8, and 2. So how did you not see that this is going to be a guy whose longevity had passed him?
I don't know.
And durability had passed him and all that sort of stuff. So they should have made a call on him a lot earlier, because it was quite obvious his body was letting him down. And even those years he was playing, he's 6. And maybe this is a little bit misguided, because Buckley was playing him forward and playing him around. Maybe if he was playing in defence, he would have been better or whatever. But going on what we saw, he wasn't actually, would you rate him better than Mychek, for example?
Nowhere near.
He didn't have the agility. He wasn't as fast. He was a decent kick, but he lost that penetration in his field kicking. And he was an okay mark, but he wasn't, he really was that sort of, what he turned into was, just pretty much an everyman type forward, where you go back to his All-Australian year in 2011 and 2010, he was a brilliant intercept mark. Yep. He was a fantastic kick out of the fence.
Absolutely,
he could read the play. He had maybe didn't have a great turning circle and all that, but he had agility. He could run at the ball. He had decent speed for his size. So he was a pretty special talent back then, but, it really unraveled pretty quickly for a variety of reasons. So they should have been able to make a call on him a lot earlier. So I don't know if they had just given him a good contract at the back of 2016, where he played 17 games, and they were just rolling it back and back and back and back, and thinking maybe he'll get back to his. I don't know. But the other issue too is, hey, what's our record like of soft tissue injuries?
I think it's superb in causing them.
You've rehabilitated to an extent Darcy Moore and Jamie Elliott, but there's a whole litany of players who've had soft tissue concern. I mean, Jordan De Goey was one last year. You go back to Nathan Freeman and all that sort of guys. It's one of the plagues of the club. So the moment we have any player who has soft tissue concerns, we're all sort of sitting there going, well, they're telling us 2 weeks, but it's likely to be 12.
Yeah.
You sound excited.
No, nowhere near. I mean, look, it's the end of the season. It was a shit end of the season. It's been a shit number of weeks. So, I think it's natural to feel flat.
What do you feel about, and this I found actually really interesting. Jeff Walsh, when he came out and did the Monday morning, whatever morning it was, Friday morning interview, he sort of said that he basically implied that they used that loss to Geelong in the final as pretty much their report card.
So that just invalidates the previous week.
And Mark Anderson actually addressed that. Yes, we had a good game, but then we did this, and it's like, seriously, did you use that? How could anyone use that Geelong game as a gauge, given that you're all shit? You should have all been fired based on that. Again, it's like that. Oh well, Stevenson had one bad season, so that's what we'll just judge him on the bad. I don't get that, and that also suggests to me. And I mean, this is my biggest concern with Collingwood and Buckley is in Nathan Buckley's autobiography. He speaks about getting to the club in '94 and there being an air of complacency about the place. He said that these guys had climbed the mountain in 1990, and some of them just weren't going to go there again. They were going to go above and beyond. And I'm pretty sure it was Craig Kelly, who's his manager, said what they should have done was trade out and rejuvenate the list while players have currency. If you look at Buckley, what he did after he first coached in 2012, and then I think he got rid of Dawes at the end of 2012, and then at the end of 2013, that's when we had a bit of exodus. We lost Daisy and Heater, and then you were losing guys like, Wallingham and all those sort of guys. And he made the determination from memory after, I think, Sydney hammered us, where he felt that we weren't going to, it was done for the list. And that was why he decided to rebuild. And he decided to rebuild, or they decided to rebuild in the period that the drafts are compromised by the expansion clubs monopolising all the best young talent.
It's genius, isn't it?
Good choice. Coming to this, at the end of this year, they got smashed by Geelong, and it seems that they've jumped to that judgment again to some extent, where they've gone, this list's not going to do it. This is when we trade out, we'll clear the salary cap and all that sort of shit, and we're going to do it on the season we have no form line to judge the youth by, and we're going to try and rebuild. And they tried to get their 5 picks or whatever it was in the top 30, and they totally missed out on it and got 1. It just seems that, hey, maybe you need to look at your handling of players and getting the best out of them, because one issue that's marred the Buckley tenure for every season bar 2018 is simply that we just don't know what we're going to get from week to week. We really don't.
Yep.
And you look at guys like Pendles, who's 32 or whatever it is, side bottom. Before them, guys like Cloak and Swan and all that, we just pissed away the best of their careers. And this club just smacks to someone who's constantly reacting. And by doing that, they're never in a position of authority to enforce what their expectations are, or the return on their expectations. So I going into next year, I've spoken to a few people who are extremely disconsolate. There's one guy I spoke to who is the sort of guy who would be going every year regardless in every game he can, and he's just said, I have no inclination to go at this point. I'll probably feel different going into round 1, but goes, right now I'm so disappointed in everyone at the club that I just don't feel I can actually actively support them while that regime is there. And I've gotten that from a few people.
And I agree with that. Unfortunately.
Well, do you think they'll listen?
No. Absolutely not. They'll pretend to. They'll talk their way out of that approach to the AGM. The spin machine's already well and truly underway, but they're going to bank on the fact that they'll try and inject some excitement into the draft period, no doubt, which is still about 9 years away, because now we've another 16 months of potential pick swapping or something, because I'm sure we'll probably get a few more first rounders out of it. Because what have we got to trade? What picks have we got left? Fuck all.
We're going to get picked 40 for the go, surely.
And on the subject of picks, and we talked a little bit about this today, the AFL's reduced the costs for the academy picks a little bit this year, or gives you a little bit more flexibility around it. And we're talking about it today. So we've got picks 14, 16, which obviously, they're clearly hoping they don't have to use on this Reef guy, assuming we nominate him. Have we done that? I don't know. And then past that, we have about pick 65 and 70, which in point value for these academy things are virtually worthless. So unless, and I can't see where we're going to, unless we're trading future picks to get into the points thing this year, I don't see how, if someone bids on Reef, we're going to burn one of those 14s or 16s to get it now. I think if the point value is exceeded on a low pick with what the nomination is, then you get a refund back on it, which would put you back into, maybe pick 30 or 40 or something, which again is, we did all this for naught if that's what ends up happening. It's hard to know what they're going to do. And if they're pulling picks out of next year to pay for Reef this year, what's that going to mean for Nick Dacos? Nick Dacos, isn't it?
Nick Dacos, yeah.
What's that mean for Nick Dacos next year? Because, there's already the hype around him being a potential number one. We're going to have to pay a hefty price to get him. And if he's good enough, then you don't mind paying it. But obviously, like a lot of these father-sons in the academy picks, you're trying to get away with the least amount of spend you can. And even then, it looks like we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot in that respect, because we have nothing now to sort of offset what the true cost of Reef could be. But again, look, it's speculation. Maybe the magic fairies will make that one work for us. I don't know. It just looks like we're in a compromised position.
Well, they've known Reef's been there, for however long they've had him in their academy, and they've known Nick Dacos is on the radar. So surely they have some plan. So I was just going to say, because for a change, we've got a first rounder this year, and we didn't trade next year's first rounder, so we got one next year. I don't know, and we'll have one for 2022. So I'm sure that's going to be pledged on Nick Dacos.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what really disappointed me though. This is what will piss me off. The beauty of the father-son is when you get someone with a pick not commensurate with what their output and talent is. So you look at someone like Darcy Moore's pick 9, it's like, oh, well, fuck, that we basically got him for where he would have gone. You look at someone like Travis Cloak, I can't remember where he got him. I think it was about 30 or something. It was like, well, how good's that? Same with Heath Shaw. Heath Shaw was like 50. It's like, how good's that? We got a gun so low in the draft. It would piss me off no end if we finish bottom 4 next year, and then you have to use like a pick free on Nick Dacos. It's like, oh, well, we might as well just got him straight through the fucking draft. So that's something that actually worries me in terms of next year is maybe we're just going to finish bottom. We traded a few future picks, didn't we, to other clubs, so they'll probably turn out really good for them. So I'm actually really concerned about what our returns are going to be on investments, because you be realistic, I mean, this stuff like when they trade, and this has killed me, when you talk about trades in the past, it's like, oh, it's a win-win trade for both clubs. It's like, I don't give a fuck about the other club. I'd like to burn it if possible. The Bulldogs and North Melbourne didn't give a fuck about us, so that's not a win-win trade. They won out of that. We lost. So when I'm looking at the list manager, I'm thinking, where do we get wins here? Where do we get wins that we weren't expected to get? And I think when you build premiership teams, you really need that. You expect to get the good players early, but you need to be getting guns elsewhere, and you look at the 2010 side, they were doing that. They were getting Heath Shaw lower down, and Lumumba was a rookie pick, and, they got Wellingham as a rookie, and Nick Maxwell was a rookie, he's their captain and all that. So they actually did well to fill that team with lower picks. And I just worry about our ability to get overs for our investment.
I can't see why you'd feel that way. They've got a plan.
Oh, fuck, yeah. Just a final question. If you could nominate a president for a president and the coach, if you were saying, let's sweep for the club and this is going to be the new president and this will be the new coach, who would those two people be?
Look, the president really has to have, I guess, a swathe of contacts these days. Some obviously good acumen for business and capacity just to shut the fuck up. That'd be who I'd be. And look, who that is, I don't care. I know there's all these romantic notions about Craig Kelly and stuff like that, but I think, get the problem with Collingwood is just that everything wrong with Collingwood is Collingwood itself. Maybe it's time to distance yourself from favourite sons and people that it seems to be that if you have a passion for Collingwood, that's one foot in the door when it comes to being interviewed. I want the right people in there doing the right roles. And I don't, to be honest with you, I couldn't name, apart from Kennett, I can't name any other club's president. Oh, maybe that Peggy Walsh from, is it Peggy Walsh from Richmond?
I don't know. I can't name her.
Yeah, so that's the way it should be.
The only one I can name is the Port Adelaide one.
I want someone up there who just doesn't live this false bravado and bluster. A friend of ours, and I thought it was quite clever, just refers to him as PT Barnum now because he's the consummate showman, and he plays that particular game. He has people on side. He takes the right stances, but 21 years is too long. You're just nothing but stale. Look, I've nothing against the tenure or anything, but it's just borderline not working anymore, and it's just time for a change. And like I said, I don't care who fucking comes in as long as it's not PT Barnum. For the coach, look, I was pro Clarkson. If he was gettable, I'd do it, but they're not going to make any changes at this stage in the year. They're not going to sack Buckley. I think they've already started throwing their eggs in the rebuild basket with him, which is just going to be a non-event.
Actually, just to go on that. Sorry, remember where you are. I actually think they won't be able to sell a Buckley rebuild. I think there's just been this has inflicted so much damage on their brand, and Buckley has had 10 years that if you said we're going to re-sign him for 2 years to oversee a rebuild, the Lemmings will follow it because that's what they do, and they'll follow it all the way off the cliff. But if you look at people like ourselves, and there's a lot of people like us, they're just going, no, that's it. We're done. You replaced, after 10 years, you replaced the guy who just won you a flag and brought you to a grand final. After 10 years, there's a guy who's bringing you down the ladder, and you're going to give him some more time of very, very, very limited return to rebuild. I think it's not going to fly. It'll be like 2017, where the supporter base was turning on them because of what was happening at the club. So I don't think they'll be able to sell a Buckley rebuild. I think next year, to sell a Buckley rebuild, they will have to have at least a preliminary final appearance. And it'll have to be the sort of season where it's a relatively dominant season, like 2018. It's not like last year. Last year was they just fell into the prelim. They fell into the top four, and then they fell into a prelim. So, and when I say they fell in, I know we played a qualifying final against Geelong. We didn't get a goal for an hour in that game. So we just held on in a really sort of shitty game. I think there's people like us who are openly articulating our issues, and there's a lot of people like us. You see that in that petition. A lot of people have signed that and expressed their views and been eloquent and passionate about it. But there are other people who probably feel the unrest, who aren't quite against the club at the moment, but are going to be turned because of whatever happens going forward. If it's a poor return, I think they'll start turning. I think if Treloar and Stevenson have really good years, and Phillips, I think if they all have really good years, there'll be a backlash about, well, this is what you gave away. And if we're struggling and those teams are doing well, I know North's not going to do well because they're rebuilding. But if Bulldogs are doing well and Treloar's having an amazing season, it's going to fall back on Collingwood. Like, why weren't you using him like this? Why didn't you get this out of him?
Yep.
If Stevenson's playing really well, it's going to be, well, you know what he's going to do. You know what he'll do. If he has a good season, he'll just come out and say, hey, I had glandular fever and the hub life was really affecting me. But now that I've had a good preseason, I've been able to focus, I've been able to concentrate on my football, and this is where I want to be. People are going to be looking at the game, why the fuck did you give him up after one bad season in a compromised situation? So I think they won't be able to sell a Buckley rebuild. I think Maguire is starting to position himself away from Buckley. Maguire said in one of those interviews, I love Bucks, but I love Collingwood more. And that to me was I'm stepping away. And yeah, he did that a bit in 2017. So I think he recognises that I'm vulnerable here, and he will truly be the sort of guy. I'm not going down with the ship. I'll survive, and I will burn everyone around me before I'm the one who goes down.
Yeah.
Like Trump.
Yeah, no, very much like Trump. So back on the coaching thing. Look, I've got an interest in Mitchell, but he's the sort of bloke we should be chasing as an assistant now with the potential to groom. My biggest fear is they'll just, if they move Buckley on, then they'll just go after fucking Ross Lyon. That, I don't know. I don't think I'll be particularly happy with that one.
Well, they're talking about Sanderson and Harvey disagreeing this year, so I'm curious if one of them will go.
Well, I mean, you look, and then but the point I was about to make is, there's talk about they're down to 3 contenders for the North job, being John Noble, Gian Siracusa, and Robert Harvey, who we all know isn't going to get it. But none of them are particularly inspiring names, are they?
Well, Noble's the one who's leading the pack there, so
yeah. Well, there was a Twitter rumor that they're going to announce him as coach. But other than that, geez, I know.
I'm pretty sure Lee Matthews was talking about the coaches a little while ago, and he was saying, I think now what's going to happen is you're going to need people who have a long apprenticeship, because there's such pressure on it. And he used Fagan as an example at Brisbane, who'd been an assistant, who'd been an administrator, who'd done a lot of roles and had a long apprenticeship.
Which is what Noble's done.
Yeah, and Noble's done that. And to be honest, when Fagan got that, I was like, really? Fagan? Is he even in coaching anymore? Shows how little I know. But he has proven his mettle because he's brought Brisbane up. And Noble, as you just said there, he's exactly the same. So I do wonder if there's someone else out there like that, because there's going to have to be people who have been in the system for quite a while in different roles.
You mean Robert Harvey?
Robert Harvey's been an assistant coach since 1963.
He started his career as an assistant coach.
He was an assistant in that groundbreaking flag that they won in 66, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And you said this before with Robert Harvey. The thing with Robert Harvey is, mate, just, it's nothing personal, but for the sake of your own career, fucking move on. Go do something else.
He's not going to give up his long service leave entitlement now.
But it's like, you look at some of it's like Gavin Brown was an assistant at Collingwood, and I think he went to Northern as assistant. Now he's head of development, I think, for the young players. And it's like, go do some different roles, It's probably, when you go for your next job, instead of just saying, yeah, I've been an assistant since 1963, I was an assistant here at Collingwood. I did player development at Port. I was defensive coach at bloody Brisbane, whatever the case is, And surely as a candidate, people can go, well, he's had a fucking lot of experience in different roles. And you look at the stuff like, Paul Reece Shaw, who had very limited experience and had to take on quite a bit in a tumultuous year. And you think, well, how does someone with a lot more experience in diverse roles have coped? They probably would have been able to handle that a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
And that's no disrespect to Reece Shaw. It's just again, a very limited assistant apprenticeship. You're probably not fully armed. And you see that with Buckley. Buckley has said, I'm a lot better coaching my 28th year now than I was in my 18th year. And we know, you see that documentary they made about Collingwood, where I think Grundy and that was saying, well, he used to just come to me and say, well, I want more from you. I need more from you. It's like, well, what the fuck does that mean? And now he's a lot more articulate about what he needs and that sort of stuff. So Buckley had 2 years experience, which, I believe, I'm sure plenty of people believe, wasn't enough to handle that situation at Collingwood when you had a player division and you're trying to reinvent the culture and all that sort of shit. It probably was a role that would have been better suited to someone who'd been in the business for 10 years rather than just 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So your assistant coach was going to be Robert Harvey. Oh, sorry, senior coach Robert Harvey.
Robert Harvey, I think that'd be the fix to all. So with all of that, in terms of what you said, why is your love child Hocking your choice?
I got no idea. Hocking's been retired for about 112 years, hasn't he? He's been around quite a while. I don't know what his actual CV is, but I know he has bounced around from club to club to an extent. I don't know the exact details. When did he retire? He retired like 15 years ago, didn't he?
Yeah, it'd be a while back.
So he's been in the system. He connected with the players. This is if we're going to take an untried coach, he would be the guy I would go to. I don't know who the other options are. I don't want the Sam Mitchell. He's been like at 2 different clubs. So I'm just looking at Hocking, 2012, he's at Port Adelaide. 2014-15, he was at Port Adelaide SNFL. 2017, he was at South Adelaide SNFL. So he's coached a few things. He's in 2005, he coached Peel Thunder Football Club in Waffle. In 2006, Hocking was coach for the Geelong Falcons. Hocking joined the coaching staff at Port at the end of 2009. To 2012, he was caretaker coach. So he's been around he's been in the system for quite a while.
Actually, I think, and just thinking about it, I think it's time to get Conan back.
Conan?
Yeah, Gary Ayres.
Sure.
Gary Ayres. It's time for him to come back to senior coaching and lead Collingwood to 3 flags.
What a head of hair that guy has.
Yeah. Well, he's won about 12 premierships in a row with Port Melbourne, isn't it?
Port Melbourne.
Yeah, so I think we just get him.
Well, I've actually always thought, if I was running the club like I should be, the VFL team, and that's all going to be restructured next year anyway, isn't it? But anyway, I wouldn't be using a novice coach as the VFL coach. I'd actually go get someone who's been in the system for 10 years. It's like, why am I going to put a guy who's never coached people in charge of the VFL to teach him errors and to not articulate what he wants and all that sort of shit? Get someone who's been a coach who can teach him and bring him up. Any final thoughts?
No. I'm just going to take time off over Christmas to try and reinvigorate my enthusiasm.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, all right. So I'll follow Storm. They seem to win premierships.
Until you follow them.
Every chance. No, I'm done.
With Collingwood forever?
Well, that's the way the song goes.
For the song. Anyway, that is it from us for this year.
We'll probably come back and talk about the drafts.
I don't know anything about drafts.
All three players will get in little guns and won't play a single game next year.
Well, it's probably the case. Anyway, I hope you're feeling better about Collingwood than we are.
My advice to you all is drink heavily.
My encouragement to you all is drink heavily.
All right, let's get out of here.
All right. Let's like us, subscribe, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
And we'll see you out there.
On the roads.
Later.
Catch.